This is a profoundly deep story and a profoundly interesting story and a profoundly powerful story all wrapped into one. So many of us don't understand the power of the subconscious mind and how it can be an ally or a saboteur. And I won't go into a huge description of how the subconscious mind becomes a saboteur, but I am going to talk about how it becomes an ally for you. And the quote that you just saw is from a client of mine that I worked with for, I don't know, probably about 7 months. And I'm going to tell you her story. It's incredible. You know, we worked for about 7 months together and we looked at the subconscious mind and mistakes she had made in the past that came in patterns, she would drink too much for a number of years. It was patterns of alcoholism, and then she would spend too much money, and it was all patterns in the subconscious mind. And when you have a pattern in the subconscious mind that is negative in nature, it can be very hard to break on your own. But I'm going to flip gears here, and I'm going to go to the power of the subconscious mind as an ally. So as we worked together, she started to see her past relationships, and the current one she was in was not as fulfilling as she was hoping it would be. She started to share with me that, they were going to be looking for wedding spots, and the guy that she's been with for 8 years now, they started to look for places they were going to get married, and they were going to all over the country. They were flying all over the place. And one of the things that she couldn't understand, but she journaled about because I asked her to, is no matter what place that she went to, no matter how excited they were when they were walking through and talking to the expert that was telling them all about the facility and the venue, et cetera, within 24 hours, she was saying, I don't think that's it. And of course, her fiance would say, well, what's wrong with it? I thought you loved it. Well, I did love it, but I think that this is off, And so as we had talked over the number of months we worked together, she had told me that, the relationship was not healthy at all. And that there were too many things that were wrong. They couldn't discuss things that were important like money or whatever it might be because they would just get into raging arguments. She couldn't understand how he could promise to do things and then just walk away and never complete them. Whether it was picking up her dry cleaning because he worked from home and she was in an office or whatever it might be. He was constantly struggling with his own integrity, with being honest. And he was kind of like we would say a codependent yes man, right? Yes, but then never follow through. When it came to paying for the wedding, at first he said, honey, don't worry about a thing. I'm going to cover it all. And then as he started traveling and seeing the different cost of these places, he said, I think we really need to split it. And she said, wait a minute, you make 10 times more money than me. But I'm racing all over, trying to take time off from jobs and whatever it might be. And you want me to split the expenses when you said before a number of years ago that you would cover the whole thing? I don't have the money. We're seeing that this is so expensive and excuse me. And we've got to stay with the original plan. If you can't afford it or don't want to spend it. And he'd say, well, I can afford it, but I just think we need to split it. And she said, I can't go there. So there was this underlying rub that wasn't working, and finally she said to me, David, I don't know what to do. And I said, listen, just follow your gut. Your gut is everything to you, So they continued to look at venues and she continued to talk to him about the payment and he sort of waffled back and forth, yeah, maybe I will cover it. And then a couple weeks later, he'd say, I think you really need to cover this part of it or whatever it might be. And she eventually agreed that she would cover a certain part of it. It was going to cost her like $10,000. And he said, it's only 10 grand. I'm putting $100,000 into this wedding or 150 or something. Come up with 10 grand. So she scrounged around and came up with the $10,000. It wasn't easy for her. But here's the point of the story. Every venue she went to, like I started out the story, within 48 hours, she would start to say, I don't think that that's for us, right? They must have looked at 15, 20 different venues. And every time, 24 or 40 hours later, she'd say to her fiance, I just don't think it's it. And I had her recording, like I have all my clients, patterns that are going on in your life, good, healthy, unhealthy. And she came in and she said, David, I haven't shared this with you because I've been embarrassed. But, I'm seeing in my journal that within 48 hours of every site we look at, every wedding venue we look at, I'm finding fault with it. And you taught me something a long time ago about following my gut intuition and that my subconscious mind could be an ally. And that if my subconscious sees that I'm heading into danger, it may do things to get my attention. And she said, and it is. And the intention that it's giving me is it's telling me this isn't the right person to marry. It's not the venues, David. It's what I've gone through over the last number of years we've been together that hasn't changed. You know, the lies, the changing of the mind. I'll pay for this. No, now you have to pay for part of it. She said, my subconscious mind was telling me that this is not an honest person or a person of integrity like I want to marry. And if it's happening now, and it's been happening ever since we dated and got engaged, nothing will change when we marry. And that was the end of her story. She wrote for a couple weeks. We continued working together. And then she came in and she just said, I have to thank you so much. I would have made the greatest mistake in the world if I went through with the marriage. So I ended the engagement. I moved out. I'm moving on. And now I'm going to have your help with recovery because I'm really struggling. I thought this was the guy of my dreams. I thought we were all set. And now I'm alone, single. I won't mention her age, but you know, she's not 100, but she's not 60 either. She's younger than that, but she feels her life. At first, anyway, she felt her life was over. She could never meet someone and potentially marry or potentially have a close relationship. And then she got back to the reality. The subconscious mind had saved her from making one of the biggest mistakes she could ever make. And the great news is she listened to it. If I can help you at all with these decisions, our gut call so many times is right on and we blow through it. We overrun it. We're like a bull in a china shop. Even though the red flags are flying and the subconscious is saying this isn't a good move for you, we may do it anyway for a lot of different reasons. Codependency, peer pressure from family, peer pressure from society. There's all kinds of reasons we go through with decisions we know are wrong or unhealthy. She rocked. It was a hard decision, but she looked at her own writings, at her own patterns, and she found that she was being protected from a marriage that would never be healthy. If I can help you at all in making decisions in life, whether it's relationships or career or money or whatever, reach out to me at talkdavid.com. This is the whole reason I'm on earth. And I love every person I work with. Talkdavid.com. Have a beautiful day.